Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's an honor to host this Know Your Rights webinar. We know that we're dealing with a lot of issues. So I'm State Senator Susan Rubio, first and foremost. I represent the 20th District. And I also wanted to share personally how important this is for me. I'm also formerly undocumented and formerly deported. In fact, the first deported and undocumented senator in the California state history, personal and ways. But I want to thank our partners, CHIRLA, who's been tremendously involved and such a great partner as it pertains to educating our communities and trying to ensure that we get the right information to help our folks. And I'm also honored to be joined by Assemblymember Blanca Rubio, who I happen to know. We're the first sisters in California history, as well as, again, both of us have experienced deportation and formerly undocumented. But today, I also want to say a few words in Spanish for those listening in Spanish. Soy la senadora Susan Rubio. Queremos tener esto para enseñarles a toda la comunidad lo que deben de hacer cuando necesitan ayuda de inmigración, pero tenemos personas que van a traducir. Les quiero decir que si quieren que les traduzcan, por favor busquen el botón que dice, tienen que seleccionar el botón que dice Translation en Zoom. Eso les va a dar una persona que les va a traducir al momento que nosotros hablemos en inglés, ustedes lo van a escuchar en español. Once again, you may choose the option translation on Zoom, and that will help us give you the information in Spanish. I'm honored right now to turn it over to Assemblymember Blanca Rubio, who's co-hosting this with me along with CHIRLA. And thank you so much for joining us. Es tan importante que seamos parte de la comunidad y que aquí estemos para ayudarles a todos. Les entendemos el miedo al sufrimiento y nosotros como hemos sido deportadas, también entendemos que el trauma no se queda nada más al momento, sino toda una vida, y aquí estamos para enseñarles que los entendemos en carne propia. Vivimos el deportamiento, nos deportaron a México y queremos que sepan que aquí estamos para ayudarles. So I will turn it over now to Assemblymember Blanca Rubio. Please join us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you for joining us, and a special thank you to CHIRLA for helping our residents stay informed. I'm Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio, and I proudly represent the 48th Assembly District in the California State Legislature. Your presence today shows the strength of our communities to come together and push back against unjust administration. This is a personal issue for the senator and myself. As you know, she just shared with you, we were deported to Mexico from Texas. Then we came back to the United States, this time to California, and we were undocumented. I was undocumented until I was 13. And now I stand before you as a proud California lawmaker. The senator and I are the first sisters ever in the history of California, and the first ever legislators to have had the same experience as many of you, deportation and being undocumented. And of course, with deportation and undocumented status also comes we didn't speak English, and of course, poverty. People from other countries don't come to the United States because they're rich in their countries. They come because they are looking for a better life. And, you know, for a while, we were kind of living along and not necessarily having to worry. But now this administration has completely upended that security, if you will. But for us, for me and for us, the day that I received my citizenship was not just a proud day for my family, but it allows us the opportunity to fight the good fight and defend our community at a larger scale. And that's by being in public office. Today, I'm here to remind you that we all have constitutional rights, regardless of status. We are reminded these constitutional rights every time we pledge our flag, indivisible with liberty and justice for all is what we say. And as former President John F. Kennedy once said, we are the descendants of people who left other countries, other familiar scenes to come here to the United States to build a new life, to make new opportunities for ourselves. I want you to know that Senator Rubio and I will continue advocating for our immigrant communities in the halls of Sacramento. My district office phone number, we'll post it, is 626-960-4457. And my staff is on a phone call away and happy to answer any questions or refer you. I think we're going to give you a lot of details today, but for me, the most important thing is to take care of each other. I have neighbors that are undocumented, and what I have pledged to my neighbors is that in the event that something happens to the parents, I will make myself responsible for their daughters. It is very difficult for me to tell them that. However, it has to be said. So aside from everything that you learned today, I would love for you to think about having a plan. Have a plan of action. We all have plans for fires. We have plans for earthquakes. We need a plan for immigration raids. The last thing you want to do is be so distraught and have to worry about your children. And so with that, I want to thank CHIRLA and their amazing team. Each of them bring a very powerful and unique perspective to today's discussion. I hope that you all leave here with a stronger sense of confidence and share the great information CHIRLA will soon share with our neighbors. Now I would like to introduce to you our next panelist, Know Your Rights presenter Christopher Vasquez, Regional Field Coordinator for CHIRLA, and Russell Jauregui, Immigrant Rights Attorney for San Bernardino Community Service Center, who will be answering questions after the presentation. Thank you, and again, I appreciate all of the support for our communities.
What an incredible introduction. I want to thank Senator Rubio and Assemblywoman Rubio's staff for providing us with the opportunity to be with you today. Let me just go ahead and get this presentation on the display, and we will get started. I hope everyone is having an incredible evening today. Let me just confirm that everyone can see my display. Can I get a couple thumbs up? All right, I'm going to take that as a yes. And I also want to thank the Assemblywoman and the Senator for their vulnerability in sharing their stories, because their stories are not isolated. They're stories that many of us in our community share on a daily basis, especially right now when enforcement is at its cruelest that it's been in 50, 60 years. Personally, I have lived through this as the child of immigrants. As a citizen, I've had a firsthand view of how immigration policy breaks apart families, whether that's the deportation of my father, of my brother, and all the subsequent difficulties that my family has faced. These are things that we all experience on a daily basis. So I want to thank the Senator and the Assemblywoman for sharing their stories. My name is Chris Vasquez. I am Regional Coordinator for the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. I'll introduce our organization just here briefly. I also wanted to introduce my co-presenter, Russell Jauregui. He is with San Bernardino Community Service Center. Our moderators today are going to be Anthony Moreno and Gio Ruiz with the Senator Rubio's office. This is going to be our agenda for today. We're going to talk about who is CHIRLA, who is San Bernardino Community Service Center. I always like to start off my presentations with some of our legislative victories that we've had in California, because a lot of us don't know about some of the things that we've won in the state. We've gone from a state that was actually anti-immigrant, believe it or not, to a state that's been very pro-immigrant, that's given a lot of privileges to our immigrant community. Then we're going to go into the topic of our discussion today, which is going to be constitutional rights, and then we're going to do a little bit of role play to try to figure out what we should do in the event that we encounter ICE in our homes, at work, in public. And if we have time, we'll prepare what's called a family plan together, and we'll talk about immigration fraud, and I'll let Russell take on the Q&A portion. These presentations are usually benefited from live questions, so feel free to ask questions. Russell will stop me at any time and answer them so that we can all participate, because at the very beginning, it is going to be very heavy. So ask those questions, be engaged, and we're going to go through this presentation together. Thank you, everyone. First things first, who is CHIRLA? We are one of the leading immigrant rights organizations that was founded in 1986 as a result of Ronald Reagan's amnesty bill. what was happening is that there was a large community of Los Angelinos that were now eligible because of the amnesty bill for residency, but a lot of people didn't know how to obtain it. And of course, if you are given a privilege but don't know how to obtain it, it might as well not exist, right? So we started as a way to help out the immigrant community fill out their paperwork, and then as a result of or response to Governor Pete Wilson, who issued Prop 187, which was actually one of the most anti-immigrant laws in the country at the time, and it's actually the foundation and framework for a lot of the laws that are going around the country. Specifically the one in Arizona, which is SB 1070, the laws in Texas and Florida. They're actually based off of that law that passed here in California. So since the late 1980s, we have organized and built coalitions and institutions to try to change the public opinion towards immigrants and to create progressive policies that promote, of course, the human and civil labor rights for all. I want to give Russell a space to introduce himself and his organization. Russell, I'm handing it off to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Russell Howdegay. I'm a staff attorney with the San Bernardino Community Service Center. We provide low-cost and free legal services to all in all areas of immigration law. For example, adjustment of status, DACA, U visas, which are crime victims, victims of crime. We also do deportation defense. That's what I do. Removal defense in immigration court, represent families, individuals, and unaccompanied minors. So it keeps us pretty busy, and we partner with CHIRLA and the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, and that's who we are. Okay, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Russell, for the introduction. Yeah, and I also want to take you on a quick legislative victories that we've had here in California so that you can learn about some of the rights and privileges that immigrants have in the state. One of my most proud moments was when we passed AB 540, which is actually in-state tuition for undocumented students. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but the fruits of that labor are actually being shown today through the undocumented doctors, the undocumented lawyers and nurses and professionals that are prevalent across California society. In-state tuition is a really, really important tool for undocumented students to actually get an education here in the state. And I'll explain why. In-state tuition can be anywhere between 200 to 300% cheaper. I went to a UC here in California, and in-state tuition for students is actually about $14,000-15,000. On the other side, out-of-state tuition or international tuition at a UC could go up to $48,000. That's almost a difference of about four times, right? So in-state tuition makes university and higher education available for our undocumented population, and it is one of our proudest moments. We also passed what's called the California Trust Act, which prevents local police from collaborating with ICE and federal law enforcement. We passed AB 60, which is driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. AB 60 is another one of our proud moments. Since its passage in 2015, we've actually seen a marginal decrease in the cost of uninsured motorist insurance, because if you have a driver's license, you're more likely to get insurance. You wouldn't think about those things, right? We passed AB 60, so now anyone can get driver's licenses in the state of California, regardless of their immigration status. Starting next year, we're also going to be issuing IDs, which is a huge, huge boom for those immigrant community members that don't know how to drive yet, right? We passed the California Dream Act, which provides certain student grants to undocumented students that arrived before their 16th birthday and graduated from a California high school or equivalent. We passed a Medi-Cal expansion for all, which is incredible. Unfortunately, the Medi-Cal expansion bill is being sunset at the end of this year because of budget concerns. But all of these things are benefits that immigrants are eligible for here in the state of California. And all of this is so important because I'll remind you, California was once the most anti-immigrant state in the country. The city of Los Angeles actually just apologized for their hand in deportation in the early 20th century of Mexican citizens or U.S. Mexican citizens. So it's a really, really big boom. I see that there are some questions here in the chat. Russell, did you want to tackle those really quickly? It was Anthony that was providing information to Senator Rubio and Assemblywoman Rubio's office. All right, we'll go to the next slide then. Awesome, awesome. Which takes us to the topic of today, which is constitutional rights. You're going to hear a lot on the news. You're going to hear a lot of pundits say that undocumented immigrants don't have rights in this country, and that is absolutely not true. This has been adjudicated nearly a dozen times in the U.S. court system, and namely the U.S. Supreme Court has declared that constitutional rights apply to everyone regardless of their immigration status. But as you'll learn, sometimes it doesn't matter, just like if you have certain privileges, if you don't exercise them, right? So that's the goal of our presentation today, is to teach you how to exercise those rights to decrease the likelihood of immigration enforcement impacting your family in a negative way. Perfect. So let's talk about CBP and ICE and their limits. I think that's a great framework to start with. The first thing you should know is that here in this country, we're still a free country, right? The police can't just stop and arrest you out on the street unless two conditions exist. Okay, they have to have probable cause that you've committed a crime or a warrant for your arrest. They can't just arrest you right off the bat. So they can't just pick you up and put you in a van and take you away, at least not legally or constitutionally, right? You'll hear me repeat that phrase, probable cause, repeatedly throughout this presentation. So try to remember this one. Also, this one's really important. ICE and CBP, or any federal law enforcement, or even any local law enforcement, can't enter private spaces unless they have a judicial warrant. That's going to be your home, your property, or even your vehicle. Okay, so remember that one. All right, so let's talk about your rights specifically. First one is going to seem really, really obvious, especially for those of you that watch US media. If you watch any sort of, police-related movie, you're going to know this first one. You have a right to remain silent. But this is really the most powerful right that I am going to remind you of today. This one is so, so important because what's happening when you're being questioned by federal immigration enforcement is that they don't have enough evidence to detain you yet or to arrest you. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to gather that evidence through the information that you give them, and they're trying to get you to self-incriminate. I'm going to I'm going to play a video just very briefly so that you can kind of get an idea of what this looks like and why the right to remain silent is so important. So what do they do wrong? Everything, right? They gave up their country of origin, and he even gave up his passenger, which is incredible. It's unfortunate, but culturally, me as a Latino, I was taught to collaborate, right? And when I'm in these situations, what's going to happen is that the adrenaline is going to pump through my body. I'm going to start sweating. My heart rate is going to go up, and my fight or flight instincts are going to kick in, which is going to make me want to try to get out of the situation as fast as possible. And it's going to make me default to that training that I had as a child, right? That I should collaborate or corroborate to try to make the situation go by as fast as possible. And that's absolutely the worst thing that you can do. Because again, if they're asking you questions, that means that they don't have enough evidence to arrest you yet. So your right to remain silent, your right to not incriminate yourself is going to absolutely be your most important right that you can exercise. All right. A quick reminder from our previous slide, you also have a right to decline searches of your property. That means you can decline entry into your home, into your car, into your bags, or even into your pockets. If they ask to if they ask to enter those spaces, you have a right to say no. And just a reminder, they're trying to get that probable cause to arrest you. So if you allow them into those spaces, you're actually giving them, you're making it easier for them to arrest you and take you away. You also have a right to due process. This one is so important right now, because what's happening is that once people are arrested, what they're trying to have people do is they're trying to have them fill out what's called voluntary deportation orders. And what that voluntary deportation order does is it removes your right to present your case in front of a judge. Basically, if you fill that out, more than likely you're going to be deported by the end of the day. And this next thing that I'm going to say is a little controversial, but in some cases, presenting your case in front of a judge and getting arrested could even be a blessing in disguise. A good lawyer can have a deportation either slowed down, canceled, and you may even have an opportunity to petition for immigration relief. So your right to due process is very important. If you're ever arrested, make sure that you don't sign a voluntary deportation order, or at least don't sign it without the advice of a lawyer that can explain what the pros and cons are. And at the end of the presentation, I want you guys to ask questions about your rights to due process to Russell, because he can provide a unique perspective on what this means. You also have a right to an attorney. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court in the 19th century ruled that immigration concerns and immigration issues are civil, which means that although you have a right to obtain an attorney, the onus is on you to pay for it. The state won't pay for it on your behalf, but you do have a right to an attorney, and you have a right to hire one. And of course, it's advisable for you to have information to an attorney on your person at all times in the event that you get arrested or detained. Perfect. What not to do. Remember what I said about probable cause? One of the best ways that you can give probable cause to an immigration official, or really any law enforcement, is to run away. So don't run. This one is fairly obvious, right? But remember that fight or flight instinct kicks in when we're in difficult situations, so don't run. And a quick reminder, you have a right to not open the door if ICE comes to your home, okay? Reminder not to sign any documents without the advice of an attorney, specifically a voluntary deportation. We've seen cases where people have come to our office here in San Bernardino and have told us, hey, my father has been a legal permanent resident for 25 years. They went to a border stop and ICE forced them to fill out force them to vacate their legal permanent residency, and now they're in deportation proceedings. So don't sign any documents that you don't understand. Okay, that's really important. This one's also important. Lying to an immigration official could be considered a crime. Don't lie. The cardinal sin currently in immigration is lying about your immigration status. I grew up in the 90s where it wasn't uncommon for people to go up to the border and say, hey, I'm a US citizen, and be let into the country. Currently, that is one of the only things that is very difficult for immigration to forgive. So don't lie about your immigration status. Remember, you have a right to not incriminate yourself. If you feel that you're at the point of incriminating yourself, it's better to just stay silent. Now, these two are also really important. We also want to make sure that you don't carry any fake documents on your person. That's a federal crime. Don't carry the documents of another person. And carrying documents from a foreign country, that could be a matricular ID, it could be a foreign passport, that could give them probable cause to arrest you. So leave those at home, okay? Perfect. I also want to teach you how to identify what a judicial warrant looks like, because what's happening right now is that ICE and Federal Immigration Enforcement are writing their own what are called administrative warrants. Now they do have some legal standing, but administrative warrants don't provide federal law enforcement a right to enter private spaces. So if they come to your home with an administrative warrant, you can decline their entry. So I want you to be able, before the end of this presentation, to be able to identify what a judicial warrant looks like, what a valid warrant looks like. The easiest way to do that is to look and see who wrote the warrant. You'll see here where my cursor is that this one says United States District Court. This was written by a federal court, right? Administrative warrants, on the other hand, will say something like Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That is an administrative warrant, okay? That doesn't give them a right to enter your home. You can decline this one immediately. Now, you also want to make sure that valid judicial warrants have correct information on them. You want to make sure that they have the right address. You want to make sure that they're current. And you want to make sure that they are written by a federal judge. If they're missing any of this information, give your lawyer a call. It's possible that you can even decline their entry, okay? But just want to make sure that you're aware how to identify what a judicial warrant looks like, which is the one here on the left, and a administrative warrant, which is right here on the right. All right, now we're going to talk about how these rights will affect us in different scenarios. What do we do if ICE comes to our home? First thing is a reminder, right? Don't open the door. Let's have a strategy in place for if ICE comes to our door. Remember, if they don't have a judicial warrant, that means they can't enter. So let's come up with a strategy. Let's try to figure out what the front of our home looks like. We want them to show us the warrant, right? But how are they going to show it to us? I have a Ring camera. I have one of those video cameras. I would typically just have them show the warrant on the Ring camera. That's an easy way for me. But what if you have a mail slot? Have them slide into the mail slot. If you have a window right next to the door, have them show it to you through the window. Slide it through the door if there's enough space under the door. Come up with a strategy specific to your home, and try to remember that in the event that a high pressure situation happens. Now, I will say this: don't even take off the deadbolt. Don't remove the locks. Okay. Why is this? It's been interpreted in some situations where in courts, the officers have said that they believed or there was implied consent that you were going to let them into your home if they hear that if they hear that the deadbolt is coming off. A lot of immigration officials will grab the door and push it open and force their way inside the home. Right now, because of their quota system that they are implementing, they're trying to get as many collateral arrests as possible. So what they're doing is they're getting one warrant, using that warrant to gain entry into a space and try to arrest everyone within that space. That's a really, really common thing. So don't open the door. Now, I want you guys, I know that I've been speaking for a little while, but I want you to tell me whether or not this particular warrant gives them a right to enter your home. Let's take a quick look at the chat. All right. Russell says no. Russell, you want to walk us on why this one's no?
Sure. That's not a judicial warrant. Okay, that's not signed by a judge. It is not coming from a court. It is coming from probably Immigration Customs Enforcement or Department of Homeland Security. It's usually signed by an officer, but this is maybe a warrant for someone's arrest for an immigration violation, but it is not. It is not sufficient for an officer to enter your home. So this is not a search. It is not a search warrant. It's not a warrant to enter your home. So if they show this, it's not valid. They cannot enter your home just with this.
Exactly. And the trick here is to see who wrote it. This one says U.S. Department of Justice. So that's an easy way to see whether or not it's a search warrant that allows them into your home, right? Perfect. Now, what do we do if we're stopped by ICE in a public space? Remember, you can't be arrested in this country unless those two conditions exist, whether or not they have a valid warrant or probable cause, which means that we should never inform the officer about your immigration status. Never carry fake or foreign documents on your person if you're in public. And if you're arrested, ask to speak with a lawyer and ask to speak with a judge. Okay, easy enough. I want you to also maybe memorize some of these bonus phrases if you're ever detained by any law enforcement. What's nice is that all of these rights are universal. they aren't just specific to immigration enforcement. You can use all of these phrases, all of these rights with any local law enforcement actually. So I want you to remember these bonus phrases if you're ever detained in person. First, you want to ask, why are you stopping me? Because they're not allowed to profile you. Okay, why are you stopping me? Am I free to leave? If they say yes, leave calmly, don't run. If they ask you questions, remember, you can say, I'm choosing to exercise my right to remain silent. Now, what if they ask to look into your car or go into your purse or your pockets? Easy enough. I do not consent to searches, right? And if they continue asking questions, no, I'm not going to answer questions without my attorney present. Simple enough, right? What's nice is that if they don't have the probable cause to arrest you, they can continue asking questions for an extended period of time. But eventually they have to let you go. If they don't have probable cause, they can't arrest you. Okay, so remember these bonus phrases. Don't provide them with, or don't self-incriminate, basically, right? All right, now what do we do if ICE comes to my workplace? What you should know is that we passed what's called AB 450, which prevents employers from allowing ICE to enter your workplace. If you have an employer that violates AB 450, you can actually document a complaint. You can call CHIRLA and we can help you document that complaint, and they'll actually fine your employer. So one right that you should be aware of. Now, employers have the same private rights that individuals do. That means that they can decline entry. They can trespass them. They can tell them to go away. What's important if you're an employer is to have a conversation. Sorry, if you're an employee, is to have a conversation with your employer to try to come up with an action plan in the event that ICE comes to investigate your workplace. I'll remind you to keep calm, because running could be construed as probable cause, and they will arrest you. We have seen that when ICE comes to Home Depots to do raids, they'll go after the people that run. They may leave the people that they just sit, but they'll go after the people that run. So don't give them that probable cause. Reminder to have that conversation with your employer, because if you assign a point person, maybe a manager or a shift lead, that person can tell ICE to go away. Where it gets a little bit different from if ICE comes to your home is that ICE can technically go into what are called semi-public places. That could be think of maybe a McDonald's. They can go into the dining area, anywhere that the public could generally go into. They can go into without permission until someone tells them to go away. So have that conversation with your employer so that you can assign a point person that can trespass them and tell them to leave. All right. We're also going to cover what's called preparing a family plan now that we've covered all the basics when it comes to constitutional rights, because sometimes you can do everything the right way. Sometimes you can do everything right, exercise all of your rights, but you may get arrested, or the worst may happen. So we need to start having conversations with our family to try to come up with an action plan to try to protect ourselves. First thing you need to do is to have conversations with your family, and everybody in the home needs to know what their legal status is. It is unfortunately way too common in our communities where young adults won't know that they're undocumented until they fill out the FAFSA. Can you imagine going your entire life, going to, California schools, getting straight A's, getting scholarships, only to fill out the FAFSA and find out that you're undocumented? That is a really common phenomenon. We can't have that. We need to have conversations so that we can prepare for the worst. We also recommend that if you have children that are under the age of 18, that you fill out what's called a child care affidavit. I'll share a website where you can download a copy or a version of our child care affidavit. It basically allows your family member to do two things. It allows them to register your children into school and make certain medical decisions for up to a year. So that'll buy you some time so that you're not forced to reunify the family right away if someone is deported. You also want to gather important documents and keep them in a safe and accessible place. This one's really important. I'm Mexican, so the way my mom likes to do it is she likes to put everything under the mattress. If that's the way your family does it too, keep it under the mattress. Just make sure that all of your documents are in a safe and accessible place. You also want to find an immigration lawyer that can represent you if you're detained. CHIRLA recommends that community members get legal consultations every 1 to 3 years. Why? Because your ability to adjust your status may change. Maybe your children have just turned 21. Maybe you married a U.S. citizen. Maybe federal immigration laws have changed. We ask that you get a legal consultation every 1 to 3 years. That one's really important. You also want to make sure that your family knows what's called your alien number, if you have one, as well as your date of birth, because if you are ever detained, you will be registered using your A number. And I'll explain a little bit more about that as well. Another thing that you need to do to prepare a family plan is to be prepared for unexpected expenses. That could be your bond, the cost of hiring a lawyer, or the cost of resettling in another country. What's unfortunately far too common, and you'll see this really commonly if you go to a border city like Tijuana, is that you'll see people that have lived in the U.S. their entire lives, only speak English. They've been deported, and unfortunately, they're out on the streets. Unfortunately, this happened to my brother. He was deported twice during the Obama administration, and unfortunately, he was homeless for a couple of months both times. I mean, he has a happy ending now, but at the time he struggled a lot. So having that money, I know is very difficult for a lot of families, but being prepared for those unexpected expenses should definitely be high on your priority list. All right. Another tool that I want to make sure that you have before we end our presentation today is how to find a family member that's been detained by ICE. This one's really important because some lawyers are going to charge you money to find your family member. I've been told stories where people have paid $600, $700, which is, it's crazy to me. There's actually a website that the U.S. federal government hosts. It's called ice.gov or locator.ice.gov. You can enter your family member's first and last name and their date of birth, and they'll come up they'll come up in the system. Right now, because of the amount of people that they are arresting, they may not necessarily come up right away, but this is where they should come up eventually. Okay. All right. I also want to make sure that you are aware of the dangers of immigration and notary fraud. Unfortunately, in this community, because they are so vulnerable, it's not uncommon for lawyers that maybe weren't trained in immigration spaces to file paperwork that a community member may not be eligible for. You hear it really often where, especially for those of us that work out on the field, we'll hear things like, "Oh, they filed for an asylum case, but I'm from Mexico, and they weren't able to prove my case properly, so now I have a deportation order." That's a really common thing. People will come up to me and tell me I paid $14,000, $15,000 just for them to tell me I need to marry a U.S. citizen. That's really, really common. Don't call the first, immigration lawyer that you see on a billboard. My recommendation is that you reach out to a nonprofit organization like CHIRLA, like Carecen, like San Bernardino Community Service Center, IC4IJ. There's so many nonprofit organizations, and each one of us has a referral list where we can provide you the information to a low bono or pro bono lawyer if our specific legal services don't necessarily cover your use case. So reach out to a nonprofit organization, use us as a resource so that we can provide you with a safe legal referral. Awesome. I also want to make sure that you have access to some of the flyers that are relevant to this particular presentation. You can go to chirla.org/mis derechos or chirla.org/my rights, and you'll see all of the flyers for the presentation today. You can download a copy of the child care affidavit. You'll see some role play videos, examples of what a federal judicial warrant looks like and an administrative warrant. So many resources are available on this website. I definitely encourage you to look him up. CHIRLA also offers free immigration legal services in San Bernardino and the Inland Empire and LA counties. We offer free general legal consultations, family petitions, U visas, VAWAs, citizenship applications, even DACA renewals. Two particular visas that I want to make sure that you as community members are aware of are U visas and VAWAs, because a lot of people don't know that these exist. And if you are in this presentation today, that means that you're likely a community member that's involved. You probably take leadership roles in the communities that you participate in. So I want to make sure that you're aware of these two visas. U visas specifically are for victims of violent crime. So if you are a victim of violent crime, it doesn't matter how you came into this country. It doesn't matter if you have a criminal record. You may be eligible for a U visa. Okay, I like to think of it kind of like a cheat code. VAWAs are, it's a visa that was made available during the Clinton administration. It stands for Violence Against Women Act. It's basically a visa for victims of domestic violence, where the perpetrator is either a citizen or a resident. This one, you can't have a criminal record, but what's nice about the VAWA is that you can get your citizenship within 3 years, and your children may be eligible to obtain a VAWA with you as well. I will call out that these aren't necessarily or specific to male to female violence. It could be male to male, female to female, female to male. Okay, so don't be confused by the name VAWA. These are specifically for victims of domestic violence. Okay, those two are, again, cheat codes. I want to make sure that you are aware of them and that you take them with you to the communities that you serve. Awesome. Now I'm going to open the space to Russell to answer any questions that you have today. I want to appreciate all of you for your patience through this presentation. I know it's been very, very heavy. Anthony and Gio are going to be moderating the Q&A.
Thank you again, Christopher, to Christopher Vasquez for the very informative and educational presentation. I just want to give another brief reminder to the audience to please submit any questions you have using the Q&A feature down below. I also wanted to note that there is an option to submit a question anonymously if you would feel more comfortable with that. We do have questions coming in, so we will go ahead and get started. The first question is, are you telling me that they cannot break windows and force you to get out of the vehicle without any reason?
Okay, well, the answer is legally, no, they're not supposed to break people's windows, but we all know they're doing it. Okay, so what I would suggest is if you are approached by an ICE officer, or if you, because right now you don't even know these guys are real ICE officers because they have masks on, okay? But I would suggest is rolling down your window and present ID if they ask for it, because if you don't, they are going to break your windows. Does that say am I saying it's legal? No, it's not. But that's the reality that we have, with this current administration. So it's very important that when this does happen, that it's also videotaped so we can keep record of this. So I understand the frustration of the question, because it's a reality that we see every day. But what I would do, if they do approach you and they start asking you questions, I would roll down your window so they don't break it, okay? Because what we've been seeing is them breaking windows and pulling people violently out of their cars. If they ask you questions about your immigration status, you do have the right not to answer the question, okay? You can just say, if they ask you about where you were born, do you have status? I don't really ask that question until I speak to an attorney, okay? But, that's what the legal rights are. But given this administration, these guys are doing, basically whatever they want in the streets. So you just have to be very, very careful, okay? And so that's the answer to that question.
And the next question is, we have a person here who works at Home Depot and is asking what people can do if they're being grabbed, and even though they didn't run away, but they're still being taken.
Okay, so that one, again, it's very frustrating. It's like the first question, because there is a current temporary restraining order by both a federal court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that prohibits that type of action at Home Depots or at car washes. But as we all see, it's still happening, okay? Because the temporary restraining order is clear that they are not supposed to be showing up to places like Home Depot, like car washes, and just start arresting people, okay? Because the court has said that's basically racial profiling. They're not supposed to be stopping and arresting people based on their looks, how they talk, or the places of where they work, okay? But as we've seen, Border Patrol and ICE are just basically violating the order, okay? So people do have rights, okay? They can still maintain their silence, okay, and ask to see an attorney. If they're detained, they have the right to make a phone call, okay? Under that temporary restraining order, people are supposed to be allowed to have time to talk to attorneys if they are detained. That's part of this temporary restraining order. But again, it's very frustrating because we all see what's happening at Home Depots and our car washes still here in the LA area, Southern California area. So keep taping, keep recording those that can. And then when they go back to court in September, hopefully we'll get some stronger orders, or maybe even an order that the government is in contempt of these orders. Now, the other thing I need to mention is that this order, the case is called Perdomo Vasquez versus Noam. This case has also been, the government has done an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, so we're waiting to see what the Supreme Court is going to do. Hopefully they don't overturn this order, okay? So that's something that's on the table also. So again, I know it's very frustrating because they should not be doing this, but they're still doing it. So just best thing probably to do is, if you have workers that you care about, if they're in this area, I don't know where the Home Depot is, but there is an organization called the Pomona Economic Opportunity Center. They work a lot with the Inland Empire the day laborers, and so they do provide your rights for the day laborers. That's that one.
And someone also wanted to know, what happens if someone is arrested unconstitutionally?
Then that person hopefully has access to legal counsel who can challenge the arrest. Now, as Christopher said, the problem with immigration law is that you have a right to counsel, but there's no public defender system. Okay, so those of us that do nonprofit work, there's not enough of us to represent everyone. Okay. But if you can get access to a nonprofit like CHIRLA or our center or Immigrant Defenders or CADESEN, there are good lawyers that can challenge unlawful stops and arrests by ICE. In fact, before we came on today, I'm working on a brief on that same issue. One of our clients who drove away from Home Depot, and we believe his arrest was unlawful. So we're going to challenge that in immigration court. That's that one.
The next question is, can agents enter non-public areas such as break rooms, storage rooms, etc.?
No, okay, but for whoever's ever asking this question, you need to put like signs on your businesses that definitely say private area, that no one is allowed. Okay, like for example, here in our office, we have signs all over the place that says this is a private area. No one is allowed in this private area. Okay, so that way, if ICE officers do show up and these signs are up, those are areas that they cannot enter unless they have a search warrant, as Chris talked about.
We have another question. This person is a resident of Hope for Home Shelter in Pomona. They say many of us, including immigrants, feel unsafe, unhealthy conditions despite millions in public funding. I'm here to ask, how do we make sure dignity and safety are protected for everyone, not lost in neglect?
Okay, that I presume I'm guessing you're talking about a shelter. You probably, that one, probably we should talk to a nonprofit legal service provider to see what can be done. I think if you're in Pomona, the legal services, there's an organization called the Legal Services Organization, LAFLA, the LA Foundation, it's called the LA Legal Services, LAFLA. Okay, it's called Los Angeles County Legal Services Organization. They do have housing units, okay, and attorneys that work with housing issues. So you may want to contact them to see what your rights are, what can be done. Again, it's called LAFLA, LAFLA. They probably have a website, the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. There it is, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. They probably have a housing unit. You may want to talk to them, and probably even have a website to see if they have a housing unit and see if you can talk to them about the concerns that you have regarding the place that particular center.
The next question is it only the driver that needs to show an ID, or also the rest of the individuals inside the car if there are any?
No, it should only be the driver. Okay, it should not be anybody else in the car. Okay, again, but you can't control officers, okay, in the street. Okay, so they start asking for other people's ID. You probably don't want to argue and just go ahead and show them your ID. But once again, if any officer, any police officer, or any Immigration Customs Enforcement Border Patrol asks about your status and you're undocumented, you have the right not to answer that question and say, I want to talk to a lawyer first.
Okay, next question is, what protections can churches give, if any?
Okay, again, you should, again, if it's a public area, ICE can enter. Unfortunately, under this administration, churches used to be protected areas. Now they are not. Okay, so public areas around the church, even inside the church itself, they may want to enter, believe it or not, and they've done it already. Okay, so, but if there's areas that are just private, like your confessional areas, or the areas where the priests or the sisters live, or the business areas, you can put up private property signs, no one allowed. Okay, so I would just, what you need to do is, again, look at it, all the areas that are private around the church. Okay, if it's for the places where the priests meet, if it's a confessional area, if it's areas that are for the church records or church offices, put signs up that say a private property, no entrance. Okay, that way they cannot get in unless they have a search warrant.
Next question is, do you have any additional rights as a U.S. citizen when dealing with ICE? Or what are the differences between U.S. citizens and undocumented immigrants?
Well, again, given this current administration, if you are a U.S. citizen, of course, you cannot be deported, okay? But as we've seen, there have been U.S. citizens who have tried to help undocumented folks, and U.S. citizens have also been arrested. So again, given the current administration, they're picking up anybody and everybody who looks brown. And if you try to protect an undocumented person, then they may take action against you. In fact, they have. There's been at least there's been, at least that I'm aware of, a couple of U.S. citizens who have tried to help undocumented folks who have been arrested for impeding an arrest. Okay, and a lot of these are being challenged by good criminal defense attorneys. So again, given this administration, as a U.S. citizen, you should have more rights, okay, when dealing with Immigration, Customs Enforcement, or Border Patrol. But their boss is basically the Trump administration, and they have a green light to do what they want. So if you want to stand up and protect undocumented folks, please do it, but do it where you're safe. Don't get too close. You can film. Okay, you can also ask that person their name so you can try and help them, but don't get too close so where they can say you're trying to impede them. Okay, keep a distance and tape. Okay, and use your phone.
Okay, next question is ICE allowed to enter inside the buildings on public or private college campuses?
Okay.
My understanding is that the outside of buildings is public, but what about the inside of buildings?
Okay, yeah, so the outside of buildings is probably a public area, but at universities, I think each university should have their own protocol how to deal with this. But like, for example, of course, if it's inside the building, I would say like classrooms, administrative offices, those are all off. Those are all, they cannot be entering those places. So once again, the universities may want to protect themselves and put like private property signs on their doors, or private area entrance not allowed. Okay, so ICE cannot get in there. Okay, you also, I think probably the UCs and Cal States, they probably have their own protocol on how to deal with this. Usually when something happens on campus, they know who to call, who to contact, and how to deal with ICE. Okay, because usually if they don't have a search warrant, they should not be getting into any classroom. They should not be getting into any administrative offices anywhere. Okay, or any kind of office. Okay, where someone's meeting with clients, students, and have files. Okay, all those types of areas should be off limits. But you want to make sure and put a sign up that says private property, no entrance allowed. Okay, but check with universities. They already may have their own protocol. They should, dealing with these issues.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, you're advising for people to pretty much comply with the law and exercise their rights by staying silent, not running and not opening doors, etc. In the case that ICE still violates our rights, what do you suggest we do?
Okay, again, it's a matter of you getting access to counsel. Okay, if you can. Okay, there's some good there's some good lawyers who are immigration lawyers who are in private practice and do great work. Okay, and again, there's also nonprofits that do provide legal services. So if you can get access to a good lawyer, many times if you contact a legal service provider like CHIRLA, like San Bernardino Community Service Center, immigrant defenders, Caresen, they do have good lawyers on staff. Okay, and also if you don't qualify for their services, they can probably refer you to a good private lawyer who can help you.
Next question is, what happens if we cannot get legal representation and we are deported for being racially profiled? I have no criminal record nor any deportation orders.
Okay, in your case, I would just be very careful right now. Okay, what I would tell you now is you have to be very hyper vigilant. Okay, I don't know where this person lives, but I would not go towards San Diego because you have to pass checkpoints. Okay, just stay in the area where you're living. And just be very careful about where you go. Okay, if you have access to any coalition. Okay, a lot of them have good rapid response networks where they actually put on social media where an ICE raid is at. Okay, just if you have any access to any of those, just stay on top of those and be careful. Okay, about what you're doing. It's because hopefully we'll get through this. Okay, but if you're not on anybody's radar, okay, they're probably not going to know you're here. Okay, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Before I ask the next question, I just wanted to note that we have a few questions left. I just want to let people know that if they have any questions, to feel free to put it in the Q&A, submit through the Q&A feature through Zoom. Next question is, what happens if my loved one or friend is arrested and placed into an immigration detention center not in my state and I'm unable to access them? Okay, so again, as Christopher pointed out, if that ever happens, there is something called ICE Locator. Okay, you can go to ice.gov. Okay, and it's called ICE Locator. If you put in your loved one's name, date of birth, it will tell you where they're at. Now, the reality is, okay, this is reality is sometimes, given what's going on now with ICE enforcement, sometimes you don't know where the person is for a while because they move them around. Okay, but just try to go to ICE Locator and stay on top of it so that you can try and locate them. Also, a very good resource that you can use, depending on, for example, if the person is Mexican, you can call the Mexican consulate. Okay, they're a very good resource, and they can have access to the person that is detained. Okay, because they even have sometimes they're better sometimes at accessing folks than lawyers are, because as a Mexican consulate, they do have consulate rights. Okay, and ICE must deal with them. Okay, so you can also ask the Mexican consulate for help so they can try and locate your family member. Okay, and if your member is detained, they do have rights. Okay, they have the right to say that they demand to see a judge. Okay, an immigration judge, and once they see the immigration judge, they can ask to have what's called a bond hearing, which means they can be released upon payment of a certain bond. For the test is they must show that they're not a danger to the community or a flight risk. Okay, and again, it's try to get counsel, because there are certain defenses for people that have been here a long time and have U.S. citizen children. Okay, so
That's basically my answer. So just use ICE locator, okay? And if you can't find someone, if they're from Mexico, then use the Mexican consulate. If they're from El Salvador, call the El Salvadoran consulate. If they're from Guatemala, call the Guatemalan consulate, because as consulates, they have certain rights, okay? And ICE and Department of Homeland Security must deal with them, okay?
I believe this next question is a follow-up from the earlier question about Home Depot. But the person is expressing their appreciation for your advice, and they'll let the individuals know at Home Depot, and they're wondering if a police officer or local law enforcement can stop ICE from detaining these individuals. I guess what's the local law enforcement's role in all of this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, okay, because we are advocating that local police basically stop ICE from doing these unlawful arrests, okay? I can tell you that in Ontario, where I live, we have done they're protecting us. Been a big issue also in San Bernardino. Okay, so that's a matter, I think, of local advocacy. Again, you can work with people, often depending on where you live, work with CHIRLA, the Indian Coalition for Bringing Justice, because that is an issue. Okay? We're trying to tell local law enforcement that because
Russell, just want to let you know you're fading a little in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a matter of working with, I think, locally, advocating with your local cities and your local, like say, your local city councils and mayors, and letting them know that the local police officers are supposed to be protecting us, not us. We understand that local police officers are brought in to do what's called cooperative control, but their job is not to cooperate with ICE. By state law, they cannot cooperate, work with. So, but again, I think it's really, you have to be very vigilant on your local level. Okay, dealing with the city councils and mayors, and let them know that ICE, that local police officers.
So we have a few more questions. The next question is, do ICE agents have to identify themselves like police? Should you refuse orders from someone who refuses to identify themselves as an ICE agent?
Okay, that's a big issue right now. There has been some federal legislation that would require us not to use masks to identify them. Okay, there are two state bills now in the legislature that would require all officers to not use masks. Okay, because that is a huge issue, because people are afraid. They don't know what they're dealing with. They don't know if it's an imposter. They don't know. And if you can't see their faces, and if you can't see their badges, and they don't identify themselves, then of course people are going to be afraid, and you don't know who you're dealing with. Okay, so again, but if depending on but in the real world, okay, if you don't yourself, you could get hurt. Okay, because I'm just telling you, in the real world is that we've seen people who resist, and they end up getting basically pummeled by these ICE agents, or if they're bounty hunters. We don't know really who they are. Okay, so my advice would be just be careful. Okay, hopefully if these bills pass, we'll all be in a better place with the people, so they will not be able to use masks, okay, to identify themselves. That way you know what you're dealing with. Okay, but for now, just be careful, okay, because we don't want to see anything get. Because too many people have it.
I believe this is a follow-up question from a previous question, but the question is, yes, but that can possibly take months to update. I think this is regarding the tracking of family members.
Yeah.
And then they say, and what if I can't get help because I'm also undocumented?
Okay, once again, I would really suggest that if you try to work with I don't know if the person is Mexican or Salvadoran, try to work with the consulates, okay? Because again, sometimes, for example, consulates can have access to border patrol stations that lawyers cannot. Okay, so if you're having trouble working with the US systems to try to work to get the consulate, or during consulate, okay, because again, they can try and help you find your family member.
Okay, there's a question in Spanish that I'm gonna repeat in Spanish and in English. Hay una pregunta que dice, ¿recomiendan aplicar para visa ahora o también para que lo pida un hijo ciudadano a los padres si entraron por la frontera? The question that this lady asked was, do they recommend applying for a visa now or also a U.S. citizenship while a child is petitioning for their parents? If so, if they enter through the border?
Question. Okay, that's a very good question. Okay, the person should talk to an attorney or a nonprofit because, yeah, this can be very sad, okay? A US citizen adult over 21 can file a family petition for their parent. Okay, but if the family petition is approved, that's only the.
You're fading out, fading a little in and out again.
Okay, so, okay, let me repeat it. Okay, so a US citizen, an adult US citizen over the age of 21 can petition for their parent. Okay, but if the petition is approved, that's only the first step. So the next question is where can the parent finish their process? Can they finish here in the United States? Or are they going to have to leave the country? Okay. If the parent entered like on a visitor's visa many years ago, most likely they can still finish the process here. In other words, if they entered legally, okay, or if they have a petition that was filed for them before April 30th, 2001, okay, if they don't have either one of those, then they're probably going to have to leave the country to finish. And if they've been here more than 1 year without status, once they leave the country, they cannot come back in for 10 years, okay? That's very cruel, okay? It's very sad, but that's the reality. That's the law when a U.S. citizen, adult child wants to immigrate to their parent, okay? So before they do that, before they start, they should have counsel with an immigration lawyer, or at least go to a nonprofit so they can see if U.S. citizen son or daughter can do this without their parent having to leave the country.
Next question is, what are 287 and 274 sections of INA? And do these sections mean that they can arrest without any regard to constitutional rights?
287, 274, I have to look that up. So if the person, if you want to type in your email address, because I'd have to look those up right now.
Okay. The next question is, when people are put into a detention center, are they able to just call a pro-immigrant organization to get a lawyer? Or should people contact those organizations now to establish attorney-client agreement just in case they are detained in the future?
Okay, well, again, it's the problem is access to counsel. And if there's enough nonprofits out there that can help a person who's been detained. I don't think you can enter into a lawyer-client agreement now because the person has not been detained yet. Okay. The best thing you can do is, if a person is detained, is again try to find out where they're located, and then you can work with nonprofits to find out if they can put you in contact with nonprofits, attorneys in the area where they're located at. Because there are some nonprofits that exist nationwide, okay, or they're specific to certain areas. So, or you can actually just reach out to local nonprofits to find someone, a lawyer.
Okay, we have another question in Spanish that says, por favor, dígame si una persona que entró por la frontera y se casa, ¿puede el esposo hacer la petición como esposa? They're pretty much asking if a person who is married, who crossed the border, can ask to be petitioned by their spouse.
Okay, yes, they can. Okay, so the question is, can a U.S. citizen file a family petition for their spouse Again, if they entered unlawfully, yes, they can. Okay, but again, it's kind of what I said before. If the family petition is approved, that's only the first step. The next question is where can they finish the process? Okay, so if the person entered without status, okay, then they would probably have to leave the country to finish the process. So if the person who's undocumented has been living here more than 1 year, okay, and that they have to finish the process outside the United States, for example, let's say they had to go to the town in Juarez, Mexico, then that person could be barred from returning back for 10 years because of the unlawful presence. Okay. But if they're married to a U.S. citizen, there's a pardon waiver. Okay, there's a pardon for. Basically, you have to show that the person would suffer exceptional hardships. U.S. citizen would suffer exceptional hardships with their spouse. So once again, the best thing they need to do is they need to consult a good immigration lawyer, nonprofit, so they can get good counseling, find out how this process works, what the procedures are, and how much the cost is going to be.
I just want to note that we do have just one more question. So if anyone in the audience had any additional questions, feel free to put it using the Q&A feature on Zoom. The next question we have is, should naturalized citizens need to be concerned about citizenship reversals?
I don't think so, unless you did something, unless you lied. Naturalization application, lied about getting. Because again, this is the administration, this is the Trump administration being very loud about saying how they want to denaturalize people. Okay, but that can only happen if that can only happen in federal. They would actually have to take it to federal court to do that, and it's a very high bar. They have to prove, okay, they would have to prove that you did something very bad in order for them to naturalize you. So I don't think they have the resources to do that, and I don't think, and because it's such a very high bar, I wouldn't really worry about that.
Thank you. And at the moment, we have no further questions. Just a few comments thanking CHIRLA and Russell from the San Bernardino Community Service Center. Thank you for putting on this presentation and for answering questions. Not seeing any additional questions right now, so I will go ahead and hand it back off to Christopher Vasquez from CHIRLA. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Gio, for your help in moderating today's presentation. Russell, you are a wealth of knowledge as always. We want to thank San Bernardino Community Service Center for lending us Russell today. For any of those that want to connect with San Bernardino Community Service Center, they are in downtown San Bernardino by the courts. Their phone number is 909-885-1992. I also want to make sure that you are aware that CHIRLA does have an immigrant assistance line, which doubles as a rapid response network in Los Angeles. It's 888-624-4752. If you or your family member has been detained, you can reach out to the 888 number, and we'll be happy to help you find a legal resource to try to help your family. We can also send out a community member to try and verify whether or not the ICE presence is a legitimate thing, because there is a lot of misinformation in this space right now. I also want to share the Rapid Response Network phone number in the Inland Empire, which is 909-361-4588. That is being manned by our coalition partners, IC4IJ, the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. Again, they have an Instagram that you can follow if you are in the Inland Empire that covers part of Senator Rubio's district, which is Pomona, Chino, Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga. Those are all manned by the Inland Empire Rapid Response Network. So feel free to take down that phone number. If you're interested in a presentation, feel free to scan the QR code. Again, a big thanks to Senator Rubio and Assemblywoman Rubio's staff for providing us with the space. And we wish you all an incredible night. Thank you for sharing the space with us today.
Night.